right, we are back, everybody. Welcome back to the D3 Spread Option on the Voices in the Stands YouTube channel. Fantastic round of 32 in Division III football last week. Hope everybody enjoyed it as much as we did. Tons of good games, a couple of upsets. Mikey, what were your key takeaways from round of 32?
My key takeaways from, just speaking from a spread standpoint was we had some really, really good spreads last week. I think when you get to playoffs, it's interesting to see how the data is going to line up when you have a lot of matchups that you have limited common opponents, matchups you don't see during the regular season. So interesting to see how that data is really going to line up in those games. And it was really accurate. We had 5 games that ended within 3.5 points or less of the spread. And one of those was Wheaton, which was -4, and that was dead on. So it was a really good weekend for those spreads. That was a big takeaway of mine.
Yep.
And I think that bodes well for the show. Good quality action for the show. As far as our picks, that we put together, we didn't have the best week. We came off of the first round red hot. We had our best week yet. But this past week, the round of 32, we got beat a little bit. We both went 6-9-1, and the push was that Wheaton game. But some of the wins that we had, I think, were really really quality wins. We both hit on the Hope +5. We both hit on the Susquehanna pick, which was
Yep.
something that we've been calling them since the opening round of them being able to get to this point. We both called Eastern, which was a pick that maybe a lot of people didn't see coming. The ones that we missed on together was Hardin Simmons. I still don't really know what we were thinking there in hindsight. That was a bad miss. We both missed on Barry, another one where we weren't even close.
Way up.
Credit to LaGrange. I mean, seriously, credit to LaGrange. LaGrange actually had the best performance as far as beating their expectations. They were 29 points over expectations, losing by 4 with a
Wow.
33-point underdog. We both missed on North Central -34. That was a backdoor cover that ended right on 32. We both missed on Alma and Springfield and Monmouth, and I still don't hate that Springfield pick. We just missed that one. It ended at 20, and I think if I'd go back, I think I'd pick them again. I don't hate that pick still. In our QBs versus cancer games, head to head, we were 3-3. Your wins were the Mount Union pick, the Bethel pick, and the Endicott pick. All 3 of those were really safe picks. And then my hits were John Carroll -9.5, DePaul, and River Falls. Again, 3 very safe picks. So those were good head-to-head games. So yes, it was a lot of good action, a lot of good spreads, and looking at this week, really really good spreads.
Yeah, some really tough ones. We never give each other's picks out to one another before we get on here because we want to have a genuine back and forth and a live reaction to our respective sides. Um, I posted on Twitter a couple of teams that really stood out to me as maybe a little bit under the radar as far as people recognizing them as national contenders or not recognizing them in that regard. Um, DePaul, man, probably my team of the week just from their overall performance. So well rounded, so balanced, and they dominated Wisconsin Whitewater. So that was not a fluky win. Um, John Carroll, another team that just dominated the box score against Randolph-Macon. Bethel, extremely impressive. Obviously Eastern,
Yep.
what a win, for that program. We'll get into more of that later. One team that I do want to kind of give their props because they didn't win, but really showed themselves as a good program that we both slept on, and you just mentioned them, LaGrange.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't come away with the win. They had a shot there at the end of the game against Barry to come away with the win. I'm beating myself up for picking against them because I thought in hindsight it was so obvious. They had the rematch with Barry looming, right? And they clearly just overlooked Framingham State. Like
Mhm.
it's funny because you don't think of a team like LaGrange. You wouldn't think that they're going to overlook anybody, but they clearly did because uh, man, the way that they played Barry was very impressive. They've got some dudes, just like we said they did
Yep.
uh, in the first week's show, and so props to them. Season ends obviously with a loss against Barry, but good team, and they deserve to be one of those teams that is recognized. All righty, and here we go as we get into the D3 spread option round of 16 edition. We are down to 16 teams, which means 8 games that we're going to cover. Um, it's getting fun. This is the time of the year down here in Texas. It doesn't get cold as much as it does where you live. But I walked outside the other day, and the smell in the air, the feel in the air, it felt like playoff football. And that's a lot of fun when you get to start feeling that weather, because that means that some of the best times of the year are officially here. So we are obviously a proud supporter of QBs versus Cancer. That's what this show is really all about. We pick against the spread, and if Mikey and I are on opposite sides, loser pays $10 per game, donates to Quarterbacks versus Cancer at quarterbacksversuscancer.com. So 8 more donation opportunities today, and we will get right into it. With our first game on the docket, Mount Union Purple Raiders, the number 2 team in Division III, hosting John Carroll. And this one's interesting for a lot of reasons. This is obviously an old OAC rematch. That's been one of the main storylines floating around Division III. If you're on X or anything like that, then it's been mentioned a couple of times. It was actually mentioned by the Mount Union radio station on Twitter, which I thought was really funny because they did not hold back. Look, it's facts. Facts are facts, right? But they posted the all-time stats: 40 wins for Mount Union, 3 for John Carroll, and 2 ties. Mount Union has also won this game 9 straight times by an average margin of 19 points in their last 5 wins. So that's dominance. Last year, the teams played twice, once in the playoffs, 42-7 in favor of Mount Union, and once in the regular season, which was a lot closer. It was 37-31. Both of those games were played in Alliance. So here we are again. And I think we've got an improved version of John Carroll. I think we've still got a really good version, maybe an improved version of Mount Union, because the offense is looking really dangerous. Mikey, which way are you going here?
Well, this is such a great matchup. This might be the game of the week. I think there's 2 on here. I mean, they're all games of the week, right? There's 8 games left in this round, but if you gotta pick picks, I mean, this is the top of the headlines right here. It's a great
Yep.
one to start with. You look back at last week, I think that these 2 teams and their respective games both played the best collective 60 minutes of football individually.
Yep.
Mount Union absolutely obliterated Muhlenberg, exposed all the weaknesses in Muhlenberg's defense, especially their pass defense, uh, in a perfect way, and in a way Mount Union should do. And John Carroll, not to be outdone, I think they took Mount Union's perfect game and they said hold my beer, and they played the most perfect game. I
Right.
mean, 44 minutes time of possession. They own RMC only ran 29 plays on offense. Absurd numbers. RMC averages over 200 rushing yards a game, and they only ran for 33 against John Carroll. This is a rush defense in John Carroll. We want to talk about their offense, right? But this is a rush defense in John Carroll now, who's allowing 34 rush yards per game on the season. And it's obviously not a fluke because there's games against Wabash in there, there's games against DePauw in there, and there's this game against RMC, who might have been the best rushing team they'd seen all season, and they allowed under their average in that game. So it's no fluke. That defense is no fluke, and I think it goes under the radar big time. Opponents complete just 49% of their passes against John Carroll. Now you got Mikey Maloney coming in. Last week, talk about RMC. How did RMC do through the air against John Carroll? House 3 for 10 with a pick and 8 yards total passing. Not very good. And I think that John Carroll's going into this game with a ton of confidence. Maybe as much confidence as they've ever gone into a game against Mount Union in a very, very long time. It's hard to pick against the Purple Raiders. It really, really is. We know how good they are. Few players play better than Darnell Williams did last week. 130 yards rushing, 9.3 yards per carry against Muhlenberg. And Muhlenberg's run defense was better than their passing defense. So that was, if there was a strength in the Muhlenberg defense, which was pretty average unit, they were better against the run than they were the pass, and he exploited them. And Mikey Maloney, what more do you need to say? 320 yards, 3 touchdowns in not very good conditions. I just think that these two teams are both so good. They both are good on both sides of the football. I think it's just going to be a punch for punch game, and 10 points seems like a lot. I'm betting against the spread 2 weeks in a row against Mount Union. I'm taking John Carroll plus 10. I still think Mount Union wins this game, but I think it's going to be like a 1, 2, 3, 4 point game. 10 just seems like a lot here. I think John Carroll is one of the best teams in the country. They're a top 10 team in the country to me.
Yeah, honestly, I'm with you on a lot of that. Here's what I think of this game. Let me pull it up right here. I think we've got another shootout alert. This one is way too back and forth to be laying 10 points. Talk about having a game. Well, it's hard to say they've had it circled because it just appeared on their schedule, but obviously, if John Carroll knew a couple of weeks ago that they had the opportunity to play Mount Union again, you're going to circle that one, right? So I think we got a shootout alert. I think we've got a motivational spot. Both teams will be motivated. Obviously, we're down to the last 16 teams in the country, but I'm with you, man. I'm taking John Carroll plus the 10 as well. The more I dug into their their team and their stats, I'm going to eat my words a little bit because last week I said, I think Randolph-Macon could be physical with these guys and push them around, and it was the complete opposite.
Yep.
A guy sent me a message, or he tweeted me last week and said, "Hey, I don't know if you've been watching, but John Carroll has got some dudes up front on defense," and he was 100% right. They do have some dudes up front, so I think we get a shootout here. Mount Union. Before any of the Mount Union haters come after me, I've been on record. I said it last week. I said, these guys, this looks like the best offense in the country. But I think John Carroll has got a great offense too. And I think they've taken a step since last season. So I'm with you. Yep. 100%. I think we've got a shootout here. So shootout alert, John Carroll plus the 10 to start off the card for me. So no QBs versus cancer head to head just yet, but we will keep it moving. We might have one here because this is darn near a pick'em. Barry hosting another rematch for Barry. This will be their second rematch of the season, hosting Trinity. And I'll start us off with this one. So the difference last week for Trinity was Hondo Franklin, their quarterback. He rushed for 125 yards. He also threw for 226 and two passing TDs. But you combine those two totals, he combined for 80% of Trinity's total offensive production by himself. His passing and rushing was 80% of their total production. Also, the Trinity defense, 11 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick six that pretty much sealed the game. So Trinity, they're definitely playing their best football right now. There's no doubt about it. Barry is also a defensive team. This is probably the best defense Barry's had maybe ever. So these teams are kind of similar. Barry's a little more of a pro style team. They do some under center stuff. They don't throw that much. Christian Lewis, their quarterback, he's got 9 passing touchdowns, 4 of which came against Southwestern all in one game. So Like he hasn't had a passing touchdown in like 4 or 5 games this year. So it's not like they're, a prolific air it out team. They run the ball too. They play defense too. This game is a pick 'em almost for a reason, right? I know the first game, I think it was like 27-6, somewhere around there. I don't have it written down, but somewhere around that was the final in favor of Barry. I do expect a closer game this time. I just don't see Barry's defense allowing Hondo Franklin, quarterback at Trinity, to run like he did against Hardin Simmons. This Barry defense is better than Hardin Simmons defense. I think it should be close for a reason. I think these teams are very similar, but I think Barry's a little better than they showed last week. We talked about LaGrange overlooking Framingham. I think Barry overlooked LaGrange a little bit last week and did not play their best game. I'm going to take the home small favorite to get this one done. These teams are really similar. I think it should be more like a field goal because I think Barry's probably, they're at home. So I don't think this line is accounting for home field advantage the way it quite should. So I'm just going to lean on the home field advantage here. These teams are very similar. I get why the line's close, but I'm going to roll with the home team, Mike.
Yeah, before we started recording, we talked about how these picks were, and what sort of we didn't talk about our picks. We talked about how hard was it to pick them. What came to you easy, like what came to you hard. And I said there was 7 out of 8 picks came to me right away. I had a good inclining from watching these teams throughout the season, but one pick I couldn't make up my mind. That's this game. I went back and forth. This was the hardest game for me to pick here. I went back and forth on this a lot. I think this spread is very accurate, and we got to be frank and with how we talk about Barry. I think Barry just was disappointing last week, and
Yep.
maybe they were looking ahead, but they just didn't play very well. They kind of came out flat. They got pushed around early. Looks like they kind of got. It was like when a boxer just gets punched in the mouth right away. It's like, whoa, whoa, what's going on here? They never quite settled in until the second half. Barry, they're about that ground game that you talked about, going for almost 220 yards per game the regular season. But they had 100 yards less than that last week against LaGrange, with 129 for them. And furthermore, they've been outstanding against the run on defense. But last week against the Grange, they gave up 214 yards on the ground and 5.6 yards per carry. If you give up that type of yardage in the playoffs, you rarely win. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about a team that won a game in the playoffs that gave up over 5 yards per carry on the ground. That's just they were really lucky to get out of there with a win. Like you mentioned, 29-6 earlier this season. That score, I don't know. I kind of throw it out. That game got away from Trinity. You can see the rankings on the screen. They're evenly ranked, even spread here. It's really really a kind of a toss up game. Trinity played a heck of a lot better this past week. That TJ Scannell, he's their leading tackler, leading TFL guy. He's also the man that got that pick six
Yep.
to put the nail in the coffin to end the game for Trinity last week. TJ Scannell is a guy that you got to account for where he's at because he is not afraid of contact. Holy smokes! And there's an old saying where it's like big time players make big time plays in big time games. TJ Scannell was that guy for sure. Looking at this game, I kind of lean the way you do. 29-6 last time they played. Is Trinity 23 points better? I think they might be 20 points better, but that still leaves 3 to play with. And I think Barry pulls this one out. I'm going to lay the number here, and I don't feel confident with it. I don't feel confident if I would have went Trinity. I'm just not very confident in this pick. Barry was so disappointing last week, but I think maybe that's going to fuel them. Sometimes when a team has that kind of shock where they kind of got punched in the mouth there, sometimes that can actually motivate a team. Like, holy cow, this is a different level of play, different level of speed in the playoffs. We got to bring it, otherwise Trinity's going to down us. So I'm going to lean Barry here. Not confident with it. Beautiful weather down there in Georgia, 56 degrees.
Yep.
So this is going to be an excellent playing surface. We're not going to see these teams hindered or have to adjust their game plan at all. You're going to see a true testament to these teams' ability down there in Georgia.
100%. Yeah, I was almost expecting you to go with the Tigers here, but like you said, tough one to pick. So we are aligned once again. All right, next game. Here we go. All right, back to the number one team in all the land, North Central, hosting Wisconsin lacrosse. Um, Mikey, this is kind of your, you cover the WIAC for us pretty well, so I'll let you start us off on this one.
Yeah, two interesting games this past week. I think both of these teams started off pretty sluggish on offense, in the weather conditions. So we have two really good offenses, Lacrosse and North Central. But last week, round two of the playoffs, at halftime, these teams had combined for 10 points scored. So that's four total quarters of football between the two. They scored a combined 10 points. North Central had all of those. And so, kind of slow starts for both these teams in the playoffs. Last week, the biggest thing for Lacrosse was they got their quarterback back. Kyle Haas was back under center for Lacrosse, and he looked really well. And he makes that offense just be able to do everything better. They have one of the YX's best running backs, Gabe Lynch, and he missed some games earlier in the year too. He missed about 4 weeks, and this was the healthiest I've seen Gabe Lynch all year. I mean, he was making cuts and making had his burst back that I hadn't seen since really early in the season before his injury. And having those two guys back, Lynch was able to find holes that he wasn't finding when Haas was out because they had no passing game. Kyle Haas just makes that whole offense better. But only scoring 9 points against Hope leaves me with very little hope that they could put together some sort of offensive performance to stick with an outstanding defense that North Central has, the best defense they've seen all season. And that's not taking anything away from Hope's defense. I mean, Hope's defense is outstanding, best in the MIAA. So that they're no slouch, but this is a different level of football here. And 17 and a half, this might be the closest spread that North Central's had all season. And I'm not sure that this version of lacrosse, as beat and banged up as they are right now, I'm not sure this version of lacrosse is the best team that North Central has seen all year. So I'm gonna lay the North Central number here. As kind of fluky they were in the first half last week, I think a lot of that had to do with weather. If there's one thing to point concern at for North Central, it was third downs. They were just 1 for 7 last week against Hanover on third down. Before that, they've been over 50% this season. So they're going to face a defense that's much better than Hanover's was. So they got to be able to move the chains there. And I think Garrett Wilson is the type of guy that can expose some of the injuries that they've had in the secondary. Lacrosse has started 4 different players in the secondary in recent weeks. They've just been really banged up back there. And Garrett Wilson's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think he can expose that. Wilson to Skokna is one of the best connections we have. So, I think North Central runs away from this, and I think this line is really low, kind of based. I think lacrosse is being boosted by some of their early season performances, but I'm not sure if they're as good now as they were in week 4.
Yeah, I mean, my big note that I have circled here under lacrosse, other than having Kyle Haas back and having the running backs back, is lost mojo? Question mark? Question mark? Like
Yeah.
that's really how I feel about this team. I was as high on lacrosse as any team in the WIAC. They were my WIAC number one early in the year. They looked great. Eye tests, big physical up front, everything solid, well rounded. It's going to take something really special for lacrosse to be able to compete in this game. It's yeah, and I don't mean that from like that they're just like a bad team or anything. I mean that more from like a psychological, emotional standpoint, that they have got to get out there and really compete and be physical and just bring a different level of, I don't even really know, just intentional, you know, cohesion and physicality that we really haven't seen. Like, it just feels like they've lost their mojo. Like they peaked early in the year, like you said. That's going to be trouble against North Central. This North Central team has not been covered really as much as like you would expect, like a number one team in the country to be covered during the season. But it's because like they've blown everybody's doors off. So we talked about Garrett Wilson last week. Luke Lanin leaves. Garrett Wilson comes in immediately as the number one quarterback in the country in passing efficiency. Throws 3 more touchdowns last week in 6 feet of snow. It seemed like, you could hardly even walk. And he throws 3 passing touchdowns. Looking back at some of North Central's results, they play out of conference against Oshkosh, beat them 45-14, made them look like varsity JV. They obviously beat a good Wheaton team 35-0. It was 27-14 at Wash U at halftime. And I wrote that down as like a competitive game because that's all there was. Like you're grasping at straws trying to, find competitive games because there just wasn't any. So I'm laying the number here too. I just don't see it. You mentioned to me over text, you were like, yeah, I'm kind of concerned about, La Crosse offensively. And I went back and I rewatched, the game against Hope and some of their games even earlier in the season. And, after some of the injuries though. And yeah, I have a really hard time seeing this team score enough on North Central. So, and then I'm trying to think like, what kind of game do they want to make it? What kind of game can they make this where they're competitive? It would almost be a defensive game, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know if they can stop the run and stop the chunk plays and stop the play action. They're just so efficient. So I'm going to lay the number 2. This is not the North Central train is not one that I want to step in front of right now. Right. If after this week, if La Crosse like exposes some holes that we haven't seen in North Central so far, then like, so be it. And like, that honestly, that would change my opinion of this North Central team. If this game was really close and came down to the wire, it would change my opinion of this North Central team. But I don't really expect that to happen.
Yeah, when I one exercise I like to do is before I even see these lines, I try to think about what I would make the line, just personally,
Yep.
what I think the line should be. And this was the one that I was the most off on. I put this at minus 28.5.
Wow.
And then I started thinking about, well, how am I this far off? Because we make these lines by pulling from Logan Hansen ratings and Massey ratings and then averaging them. And both those guys were right on this number. This was not one that they were far off on. They were both had this number on it. So I'm trying to think what is maybe happening here, and I wonder if it's the common opponent, UW Oshkosh. They both beat UW Oshkosh by exactly 31 points. So I wonder if maybe that margin of victory is feeding the data. Like, hey, these guys have one common opponent, and I think they both played them at home. They both played them at home, and they both beat them by exactly 31 points. And it was almost the exact same scores, 45-14 and 44-13. So it's like, I think maybe that's playing a factor. But yeah, I think this is like a 30-point game.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. It could, I mean, the WIAC gets a lot of respect in both of those models, and rightfully so. I mean, the WIAC's a great conference, so that's always going to play a role as well. All right, cool. All right, here we go. This is another one right on, that could be up for, game of the week for sure. Bethel at home, the Royals hosting Platteville. Oh man. I don't want to say I had a real hard time with this, but so I am going to lay the number here with Bethel, just because I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I've been very high on this Bethel team. This season, this postseason, really the whole year I've been high on them. So I'm going to lay the number. But I do want to give Platteville their dues because this wasn't the easiest pick for me. I really was hoping this would be closer to a pick 'em and I'd be more comfortable. I think Bethel wins, but it's really hard to look at this Platteville team and their results and the way they played last week, um, and not think that this game isn't going to be competitive. It's Platteville fights, man. These guys stay in games. I mean, River Falls blew out everybody in the WIAC, and Platteville lost by 10 on the road. So this is a team that, obviously, WIAC champions last year. So this is a team that expected to be here. This is a team with championship aspirations, and they operate like a championship team. And this is a really good Platteville football team. So, this again, and then to kind of top that off, both teams played in the snow last week, but Platteville looked great in a lot of snow against Alma, and it's going to be 20 degrees with potential snow here too. So you kind of wonder about that. The way Platteville was running the ball in Alma was really impressive. Bethel defense, Alma defense, not really the same thing, granted. But yeah, I'm going to lay the number here. We talked about this last week. The only comparison you could possibly make to a Platteville caliber offense would be the St. John's offense, because it's the only really quality opponent on the regular season schedule for Bethel. And they pretty much shut them down. Also, Bethel has got the fourth best rush defense, holding opponents to 1.6 yards per rush attempt. Again, like, hard to know how much stock to put into that until we see them play a couple of playoff opponents because of the MIAC and how top heavy it is. But I'm laying the number here because I've talked this team up and I believe in this team. So I think worst case, this might be like in push territory. I think it's a competitive game. I don't really see a blowout. What about you, Mikey?
This is just a fantastic game. When you start looking at what both these teams did last week, they won it, but they won in very different ways. The snow in Platteville was triple, four times the amount that Bethel dealt with. I mean, it was
Yeah.
complete. But I watched a lot of both these games. At one point, early in the game, I think it was 10-7. Alma was leading early, and Alma had just downed a punt at the Platteville's own 1 yard line, and slowly but surely, they went 99 yards, sucked up like 7 minutes of clock, and ever since then, they just took over that game. There was no doubt. They left no doubt on both sides of the ball who the better team was last week in really treacherous conditions. It was one of those games where you kind of walked away and you thought 24-7 versus Alma. Man, if that was a clear field, I think that would have been 42-7. Like, they were that dominant. And I think that was a game, myself included, we all thought, hey, Alma might be a live dog here, a live underdog that could pull this off. Just no chance on both sides of the ball. And a lot of that was due to the running back, Zach Boothen, who came back from injury again, kind of like Gabe Lynch talked about earlier. And he just looked healthy as ever. 20 carries for 148 yards through the snow. Nathan Seldon played a really, really efficient, quality game at quarterback for some really affordable conditions out there. And yeah, this is just going to be a fantastic game. I think in order for Platteville to win this game, they're going to have to do a few things. They're going to have to make Cooper Drews, the Bethel quarterback, make difficult, contested throws for 60 minutes. If you turn on Bethel tape and you watch them at all, there's a lot of times that Cooper Drews, their quarterback, he's making throws that it's like half of them are so easy you or I could sit back there and make them. That's no discredit to him. That's just their system, that he's got guys wide open, over the middle throws, throws, quick screens, a lot of quick screens, quick throws out to the flat, a lot of
Yep.
3-step stuff. They gotta get in the face of these receivers and make these throws contested. Don't make everything just layups out there. I think Cooper Drews is an outstanding quarterback. He's a huge guy, a Division I body on him. But I think sometimes, he can be a bit inaccurate. And if Platteville can kind of force their hand, they could get an advantage there. But few teams played better. Maybe just John Carroll and Mount Union than Bethel did last week. 256 yards on the ground versus and Cooper Drews threw for 250 and 3 touchdowns himself. They have one of the best wide receivers in the country. He's got to be top 10. Albert Rundell. He averages over
Yep.
135 yards per game. And this last week, 6 catches, 135 yards, 2 touchdowns. And again, another key for Platteville. Someone stop Rundell. No one has stopped this guy all season, not a single team. If Platteville can make the throws contested and take away Rundell, Bethel has a lot of weapons, but make one of the other weapons go for 135. I think that's a major key there. What I think this line is just so accurate. I think this is a really, really accurate line.
Yep.
I was hoping I could catch an edge and maybe get Bethel at like a -1 or -2. -4 gets tricky, but I'm still gonna lay the number. I have more confidence in this Bethel team right now, playing at home. They've just been so dominant this year. I think this game could end up. I think it's an accurate line. I think this game could end up around 6 or 7, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a backdoor cover here. So I'll lay the number with Bethel. Two great teams. I think Platteville is very much an under the radar team right now, and it could be a team at the end of the season that a few weeks from now that everyone's kind of forgot about. This was a really special Platteville group this year.
Man, I totally agree with you. When I was rewatching the Platteville Alma game or the highlights of it on D3 Zone, props to that guy for posting those highlights. He does an awesome job. If anybody likes to rewatch the Division III highlights, check him out on YouTube. I felt exactly the same. I was like, dude, this Platteville team is really good. Like they're clearly the second best WIAC team right now.
Yep.
I mean, like, in like, there's a big gap, obviously, after River Falls and Platteville. So, like, this is a really good team, and it scares me because I like Bethel, and like
Mhm.
I'm rooting for Bethel. But like you said, you could look back in a couple weeks and be like, "Whoa, that Platteville team was legit." And like you said, with how many good teams there are in the WIAC and all the WIAC shuffle that goes on during the regular season, they kind of slipped under the radar. So we will see. Both of these teams are going to expect to win this game. I'll tell you that. Both of these
Yep.
teams, plan on going out and winning. So great game. Definitely a game of the week candidate. Oh man, here we go. The DePaul Tigers still alive after winning outright as a 16-point underdog at the Perk against Wisconsin Whitewater. What a win for this program. A rising program, no doubt. If anybody follows, this program or even Division III closely, DePaul was just gifted $100 million for their football program. So they're going to build like a state-of-the-art stadium, and this program's on the rise in more than one areas. Not to mention they've got a darn good football team. So I'll get into it. This was the one I teased before the show that I had the hardest time with. Really not even close. I mean, I went back and forth so many times on this game. I'll just say DePaul is plus 16 last week against a good team. And now we've got to pick them. This is right at a pick them. Wheaton's a 1-point road favorite here. Credit to Wheaton. They went down and won the game. They're hot right now. The way that they moved the ball in the snow against a great Wartburg team was really impressive. DePaul, equally impressive. They looked like the number one running defense in the country. Obviously, Whitewater is, the pound the rock mantra. They did not pound the rock. DePaul pounded them. They shut the run down completely, as they have the entire season. The Ballantine brothers did their thing on offense, right? So this team is definitely more balanced than Wartburg because they can score. Wartburg really struggled offensively this year. DePauw's got a great defense. But here's what it came down to for me. DePauw's one loss this season against John Carroll. They allowed 300 passing yards against Simpson Felter. That's what Wheaton's going to do, man. That's exactly what they're going to do. It should be a beautiful day for football, 35 degrees and sunny. That's not going to stop anybody from throwing the rock around. And that's exactly what Ferrucci and company are going to do here for Wheaton. They're going to throw the ball. And that has been DePauw's weakness defensively, is really good passing attacks. That's exactly what John Carroll did en route to a victory earlier this season. I'm going to pick Wheaton to go on the road and win this game. I think the matchup is favorable. I want DePauw to win. I'm rooting for DePauw. I don't even care about the pick. I don't like Wheaton. I want DePauw to win, but I'm going to pick Wheaton because I think they're going to win.
I thought this whole time, well, this is going to be for sure the game we're going to be different on, because I know you're on the DePauw train. You say it, I'm like, he's going DePauw for sure. I'm going Wheaton too. So we still don't have a head-to-head game. I'm going Wheaton too. I'm really glad when I looked at the weather for this game, 34 degrees and sunny, like you said. I'm really glad for that, because both of these offenses are pass heavy. They both want to throw it all over the field. So though I didn't want to see a snow game here. I want to see what both these offenses can do in perfect conditions for this time of year, and just let the best team win. No gimmicks. No, you have to kind of get out of character. No, just let the best team win out there. So I'm really glad to see that. And you nailed it. I've seen a few games this year where teams with really good passing offenses like Wheaton, like River Falls, have come against teams with a good run defense, and they've kind of just said, "Screw it, we're not even going to try to run the ball. We're just going to throw it all over the field."
Yep.
And I think that'd be a great game plan for Mark Ferrucci and company there at Wheaton. Just forget about it. I mean, if Whitewater ran for 20 dang rushing yards against DePauw's, the best rushing defense in the country. All right, it's at like 13 rushing yards a game. Screw it. Just throw the ball all over the field and force DePauw to keep up. I think Wheaton has the weapons to do it. This was a really tough pick, and one thing to note about DePauw is, if this game comes down to the wire, which I think is a really high possibility chance of doing that, DePauw has a really good kicker. Matthew Berry, their kicker, he's already made a 51-yarder today this season, and with conditions being favorable, sunny, not too much wind. If it comes down to a field goal type game, they're going to have confidence in their kicker, and I haven't seen the same from the Wheaton kid. But that's something to keep an eye on for sure. But I think this is two evenly matched teams. Their rankings and the spread all reflects that. So I think this will be close. Go down to the wire. I'm gonna lean Wheaton here. I think they're just a little bit better. They have more playoff experience. They're very senior driven. They have a lot of upperclassmen, and two great quarterbacks. But Mark Ferrucci is a step above of Scott Ballantine. That's no diss to him. You're just talking about an outstanding quarterback there, Mark Ferrucci, and he's going to lead them to a very close victory.
Yeah, you said maybe Wheaton just says, "Screw it, let's not even run." That's exactly what John Carroll did, and they won the game. John Carroll, I think they only rushed for like 39 yards, so they just aired it out, and that's what Wheaton does. These guys have one of the best passing attacks in Division III. So again, I'm rooting for DePauw. I hope they win the game, but I'm picking Wheaton. Just want everybody to know that. All right. And we keep it moving. We've got, oh man, another one. Just another absolute barn burner. Great game here. River Falls and the Top Gun offense hosting the Johnnies. I'll be quick with this one. I'll start us off and I'll be quick. Spread is 12.5. And look, I know River Falls just keep laying these massive numbers and they just keep covering them, and the spreads just keep getting bigger and bigger against good teams, and they keep covering, and they are awesome. These guys, the way they run that offense is a sight to behold. I know you've seen it in person. So great offense. I'm going to take the Johnnies plus the 12.5. This is another one. Let me go get it. Another shootout alert here.
Yep.
I don't see how it couldn't be. This is like
Yep.
I don't know what the total is. I don't know what Massey and Hansen have got the total at. It's got to be close to 80 points because this is going to be a heck of a game, hopefully. And I'm going to take the 12.5 in a game that I think the Johnnies can potentially keep up. And I think that's what this game is going to look like. I think St. John's, they've got some guys.
Oh yeah.
They've got some speed that honestly, I don't know if River Falls saw in conference. As far as just pure skill players and pure speed, Johnnies have got a couple of guys that are maybe a half a step faster than some of the WIAC teams. So it's going to be interesting. St. John's probably, feels like, hey, we lost to Bethel. A lot of times good programs get better after a loss like that. So this was the easiest pick on the board for me. The spread's just way too big for a matchup like this. I love River Falls, love what they've done, but yeah, I think it'll be a lot closer than 12.5, Mike.
Yeah, this is a really interesting line here. And I got to thinking, a bunch of these Midwest games here all start at noon local time. Unless there's an overtime game, somewhere on the slate, I think this game's gonna be the last game of the day. It's gonna finish last because both these teams, we might see 100 combined pass attempts in this game. So this game is gonna go slow. This is gonna be a long, long game. So I think that'll be kind of fun to watch at the end of the day. Shootout alert. You said it perfectly. Two of the best offenses in the country, and St. John's is absolutely loaded with athletes, especially on the edges. Dylan Wheeler and Joey Gandrew. Dylan Wheeler last week, 10 catches, 144 yards, and a program record 4 touchdowns in a playoff game. Just an outstanding athlete. We talked about him last week. That's an NFL camp invite type of kid. He's that good. But on the flip side, River Falls, watched them a lot this season, watched a lot of their opponents in person, watched all 16 playoff games last week. They might have the best two corners of any team that I've seen this year. Andre Hall and Trent Cherry, both Division II transfers and making an immediate impact. They're ball hawks. They're not afraid to hit, but they're really good in coverage, and they're really good in man coverage. And River Falls has got a big safety, and they've just been playing outstanding defensive football. Since this early in the season when they got exposed by Alma and Co. defensively, they haven't given up more than 21 points to anybody, and they've played a ton of good teams and a ton of good offenses in those remaining 9 weeks of the season. it, when you're talking about a shootout, you're talking about two teams that are going to put up a lot of points. It comes down to a few things. Uh, whose defense is better? Whose defense is going to get that extra stop or two, and turnovers. You got to win the turnover battle in a game like this. You don't want to give either offense an extra possession. So whoever wins the turnover battle and has the better defense is going to win this game. And in my opinion, that's River Falls. I mean, River Falls' defense, I just have more faith in right now. Even in their loss or their win, their huge win over Monmouth, massively impressive win. St. John's, they gave up like 450 yards. I don't know the exact number. It was about 450 yards total offense to Monmouth. And it's like, man, if you give up 450 to Monmouth, whew, I mean, you're probably looking at a 500 type yardage game. We've probably had River Falls on this show 5 or 6 times now with all their big matchups, and I think I've taken them in every game, and I've probably covered. They just keep covering spreads, so I'm not going to switch that up. This is our first QB's game. I'm going to lay River Falls just because whenever you're betting a team, even FBS, right? If you got a team that you've been riding all year and they keep paying out, they're filling up your bank account, right? They keep hitting for you, you don't want to go away from them. And that's how I
Right.
feel about River Falls. They just keep covering spreads. Last week, I thought, man, this spread is really big. I didn't feel confident, but I'm like, they keep covering spreads for me. Lay it. And they covered that spread by like 3 scores. So I'm just not going to go off that pick. I like your pick. I mean, if this was fill in the blank other team, I'd probably take St. John's. This is a huge number. I just not going to bet against River Falls. They keep covering for me. They keep making me look good on this show. So I'm going to ride with them.
All right, fair enough. Got our first QBs versus cancer head to head there, so always nice to have that. And yeah, you got to ride the wagon, man. River Falls has definitely been a wagon this year, so I can't blame you. Looking forward to this one. This is one I'll have to have on one of the screens. All right, next game we head to Baltimore City. Johns Hopkins hosting Salisbury, two East Coast schools. Mikey, you start us off here.
Really interesting matchup here. Last season, 41-13, Salisbury wins an early season game. Prior to that, the last 2 years before that, in 23 and 22, Johns Hopkins had big wins, some 3-score plus wins. When I look at Johns Hopkins, I think you take away that loss to F&M. That could have been that we could look back and say that's the best thing that's ever happened to them. I think they're playing their best ball right now. I think they
Yeah.
keep getting better. I know they just lost that game, but man, this is a complete team on both sides of the ball. And Salisbury, they burned me last week when I tried to pick them to cover that number. They didn't do it. They didn't cover it all game. And I can't get behind Salisbury to cover a spread right now. So I'm gonna lay this number with Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins covered last week in a really big spread when we bet against them. I don't want to bet against them again. I'm going to lay Johns Hopkins here. And Salisbury, it's just been their defense, man. I mean, they can put up a ton of points. We know it.
Yeah.
We know Cyrus McGowan. We know Daryl Walter, the running back by committee over there. They got three guys that can run the ball as good as anybody out there. I mean, they're physical, they're fast, they're strong, great offensive line. But defensively, they've just given up a lot. They've given up a lot of yards. They've given up a lot of scores, and they've won a lot of their big games like Endicott and whatnot by just outscoring teams, shootout alerts. They've been winning those sorts of games.
Yeah.
And I think that only goes so far until you run into a defense who's just going to say, we're not going to let that happen. Like, you're not going to score 42 points. You're not going to score 35 points on us. And that's Johns Hopkins. This number is big, so it's not one where I'm like no doubter. It's a big number. I could definitely see this being a 7-point game, but I'm gonna lay the number here. I just have more confidence in Johns Hopkins. I have more confidence in Bay Harvey, Cole Karate, everything that they've done this season, the playoff experience they have. So yeah, Baltimore gonna be nice weather. Johns Hopkins.
Fair enough. Yeah. So Salisbury, I'll start with them. Yeah, I was on Endicott last week plus the 11.5 covered pretty comfortably there. Endicott was actually in that game with a chance to win. Got stopped on the goal line late in that game. So that was,
Yep.
credit to Salisbury getting a big stop there in a playoff game. You mentioned their rushing attack, McGowan, Belizaire, Walter, all three of those guys rushed for 100 yards or more each against Endicott.
Insane.
Yeah, so that's what these guys do, right? And then they'll pop you with a 40-yard touchdown pass, a couple, once a game, twice a game. So this is a slightly different looking triple option than what Johns Hopkins saw last week. A little more speed on the edges, a little more athlete based. But I don't necessarily think they're better than Springfield. To be honest with you, the defense is a big issue. In fact, I think it really plays in Johns Hopkins' favor that they're getting back-to-back weeks to prepare for the triple option. Went back and watched the Johns Hopkins game against Springfield. First play of the game for Springfield was a 65-yard run. The rest of the game against a team that only runs the football, Johns Hopkins only allowed 128 rushing yards for the rest of the game after that first play. So they clearly adjusted. Defensive line was making tackles in the backfield. They were keeping contained. Everybody was, doing their job. That's a tough thing to prepare for. But you get it back-to-back weeks. That doesn't hurt. And then the big thing, right? So you feel like Johns Hopkins, you're never going to completely shut down the triple option, but they'll slow it down. Bay Harvey and Karate, like you said. And then this kid Enright has, I don't know if you saw an incredible one-handed touchdown catch in the end zone. So they've got dudes, and they've got, to me, the best quarterback in Division III is Bay Harvey. I've said it all year. I believe that. I believe he's in an NFL camp, rookie OTA type guy. So I do not see Salisbury stopping the offense at all. Johns Hopkins, they don't. It's not like they go at the speed of light or anything. They take their time. They huddle. They don't try to run a play every 13 seconds like River Falls. But I think they're going to get whatever they want against the Seagull defense. So I'm laying the number 2, Johns Hopkins minus the 9.
Yeah, I think one stat, if you want to point to just one stat and kind of base your pick around that, it has to be, Salisbury against the pass, their pass defense. 203 yards per game on average they give up and 15 touchdowns. That's second to last in the NJAC. Boy, oh boy, Bay Harvey's not your average NJAC quarterback. And then you got 246 yards they give up through the air and 2 touchdowns versus Endicott. And again, this is totally different level of quarterbacking, athlete on the edge. So those sort of stats, you can just point to that right there and say, man, this defense they're gonna have to play their very best. They're gonna have to play their very best to stay in this game.
Yeah, they're going to be in trouble, in my opinion. All right, last one for the week, and Eastern. They are still alive. I went because I was looking for a picture of their stadium, and they actually announced yesterday that they purchased this plot of land where they've been playing their home games. Officially, the university has purchased this stadium, so they're going to have their own stadium that they own here now. So good for Eastern. Good time to do it after the biggest win in program history. Huge upset win over Franklin and Marshall. Susquehanna is a road favorite and a big road favorite after beating Washington and Jefferson and then Christopher Newport back-to-back pick'ems. They won both of those games. We were both on them against both of those opponents. So obviously big win last week for Susquehanna, kind of in a revenge spot against Christopher Newport. This to me is one that you throw everything out the window because this Eastern team is an anomaly to the models. Like this is a team that is playing. They're going to be in this game. Like, I think they're going to be in this game within a touchdown. And I like Susquehanna a lot. Like this is a Susquehanna team that you and I both really like, but the way Eastern is playing right now, they're dangerous. Brett Knapp, their quarterback, had 194 rushing yards last game. And then they put another guy in there, Averline. He's a running back. He had 108 rushing yards, mostly out of the Wildcat, which is interesting. There was a team, most people that follow D3 know, if you're new to Division III, there was a team out of Philadelphia area, Wesley College, that had some of the best Division III athletes I've ever seen in my entire life. They're defunct now. They're no longer a school, no longer a program. To my knowledge, I don't think they're a school anymore. I know they don't have a program. Happy to be corrected if they still have a school that I don't know about, but no, they definitely don't have a program. But there is now Eastern, who's in the Philadelphia area, and it's not surprising that they're starting to get some of those same caliber of athletes because that's a great area, great football players, great athletes come out of that area, and Eastern's kind of picking up the slack a little bit. Where Wesley left off as far as that talent pool, right? So I'm taking Eastern plus the 20 here. I think that they're going to be in this game. As good as Susquehanna is, I think we could have a ball game on our hands. I would still pick Susquehanna to win, but I'm definitely going to happily take the plus 20 here.
Yeah, a lot of interesting points. Eastern is definitely an anomaly to the model, and Eastern is from my standpoint, they're the best story in this tournament. Their win last week was not only historic for their program, but the way that they did it just shows how versatile they can be. 323 total rushing yards versus CNU. They were just 5 for 7 through the air. Their quarterback, Brett Knapp, who you said had 200 yards rushing almost. but they don't play every game like that. Like if you go look at their games, they're not always. I mean, these are stats of Springfield. They're not always like that. He's had games where he's thrown the ball really well, really efficiently. So they've shown that they find weaknesses and tendencies within an opponent and they exploit them, and they don't care how they win. They're not locked into one typical game plan, and that's what they do. No, no, no. They're gonna play to their opponents, weaknesses, and they're gonna use their best athletes in a way to expose that. And that was on full display. And I think they're going to bring that same sort of mentality. Their outstanding rushing offense is that's the sort of thing that's going to keep you in any game. When you run for almost 250 yards per game on average, that's just going to keep you in games. It's going to extend drives. It's going to shorten the game. Those types of things, that just makes a 20-point spread that much more difficult to cover because you're just going to get less possessions than if you were playing a team like CNU, like Eastern played last week. So I'm gonna take Eastern plus 20 as well. We
Scott.
both hit on Eastern plus 18 and a half or whatever it was this week.
Yep.
This is the biggest spread we have this week, and I think this is when I personally made this spread, I put this more around 13 just because I think Eastern's run game is gonna really slow this game down, limit possessions, and not allow Susquehanna to pull away from them. If there's any weakness in Eastern, you could say maybe it's the fact that they haven't seen athletes the caliber that Susquehanna has. They have a couple Division I transfers on the edges,
Oh
one of the
yeah.
best running backs in the country. Their quarterback is also one of the better ones out there. So they're going to be taking a step up as far as the athletes that they're seeing in this competition. Definitely the best team they've seen all season. But I think Eastern is up to any challenge. They're playing with a ton of confidence, and that's a really good ball club. So yeah, plus 20.
Yeah, no, dude. Susquehanna is loaded. This is a legit, high octane, high caliber playoff team. No doubt about it. Um, but yeah, I'm with you. I just think the number's too big. I'd be interested to go back and see like when's the last time a home playoff team was plus 20? Like they're at
Yeah.
home. This is not at Susquehanna. So it's one of those things that NPI blessed us with this year that we're, getting to experience. Thank you. But good for Eastern. They deserved it. They won the game in front of them and they're hosting. So good for that program. This will be one to keep an eye on for sure. And well, heck, that's all of them. And there's a review of the lines. Mount Union, 10-point favorite at home. Barry, a 1.5-point favorite at home against Trinity. North Central, 17.5-point favorite against La Crosse. Bethel, Minnesota, -4 against Platteville at home. Wheaton, a 1-point road favorite at DePaul. River Falls, a 12.5-point home favorite against the Johnnies from St. John. Johns Hopkins laying 9 points as a home favorite against Salisbury. Susquehanna, the game we just talked about, they're a 20-point road favorite at Eastern. So good stuff. Really enjoyed it as always. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. The tag is right there at Voices in the Stands on X. We will announce what we're going to do as we get to quarterfinals and semifinals. There's potential for a live show if we can figure it out. We'll keep you guys updated. Hopefully we can. As the shows get smaller, it makes more and more sense to do, a spaces or a live show because there's obviously less games to cover. So, but yeah, just stay tuned. Mikey, any closing thoughts?
No, just that I think it's no secret or no surprise that the 16 teams that are remaining in the Division III football season all feature some of the name brand powerhouse quarterbacks, right? Mikey Maloney, Felter,
Hey, Harvey.
Haas, Harvey, Garrett Wilson, Cooper Drews, Fercucci, Ballantyne,
Yeah,
Blahoff, Feeney,
loaded.
Ehrlich. I mean, it's just no surprise that you're seeing these sorts of names playing this deep in the playoffs. So I'm really excited to see which one of those big name quarterbacks can put their team in the Elite Eight.
That's a really good point. We've got one of the best lineups for quarterbacks for the last 16 I can remember. So that typically means we're going to have some good high quality football to enjoy this Saturday. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us again. We enjoyed doing it. This has been the D3 Spread Option on the Voices in the Stands YouTube channel. And one way or another, we'll see you next week.